Good evening, friends. We're live once again on Syracuse basketball postgame presented by Krause Health. Ooh, that's a backbreaker right there. Tough play for Syracuse as they go to overtime in Chapel Hill. Heck of an effort at the end of the game. North Carolina hits a three. It looks like they sunk Syracuse's battleship. And Joe Girard, who frankly had an awful game against North Carolina, as we'll get into here, hits a jumper that ties the game at 73, sends it to overtime. Problem was in the extra session, the North Carolina outscored the Orange 15-6 and ultimately win the game 88-79. And Syracuse is a flat 500. They are 15-15 with one game to go in the regular season and at least one game in the ACC tournament. If the season ended today, Syracuse would be in the 8-9 matchup against Florida State. So the possibility of Jim Boeheim's first losing season is squarely on the table, and Syracuse can't execute another inbounds play. They did go to overtime. They did overcome it in a sense and had the chance to win the game in overtime, but deja vu all over again as Buddy Boeheim can't handle an inbounds play. This time it came from Joe Girard in the Wake Forest game. You'll remember earlier this season at Wake Forest, couldn't handle an inbounds play, and it cost Syracuse another game where Syracuse just couldn't execute down the stretch, and so many close opportunities. They did to tie the game, but couldn't in overtime, and the Orange lose 88-79. So your comments coming hot and heavy here, friends. I'll highlight a few, and then we'll jump in the pool a little bit deeper here after we go over some numbers. Dale says, I'm doing it right now. My forehead still hurts from all the times I whacked it because of an ill-timed turnover or whistle that should or should not have been blown. Doug says, does Jim teach how to get the ball in bounds? Late game execution, non-existent with this team. Matt says, great comeback, great effort. Great game by Cole, came up just short. Yeah, we shouldn't bury the lead there in the sense that Cole Swider had 36 points in this basketball game, but also a sign of kind of went wrong in that he fouled out. Joe Girard, ill-timed, not only inbounds pass, bad shot, a lot of bad decisions down the stretch. Syracuse fouling when they didn't need to. Barama Sidibe ends up bringing the ball up the court. There were times Jimmy Boeheim had to bring the ball up the court because Joe couldn't handle it. So they hung in there. They took it to overtime, and boy, I'll tell you what, for entertainment purposes only, of course, if you had Syracuse plus 8.5, this will make the bad beat segment on Scott Van Pelt Sports Center. North Carolina didn't cover 1 second of regulation. They win by 9 eventually in overtime, Syracuse plus 8.5. So if you saw some consultants on that game, you're a winner in one sense, unless you had Syracuse plus 8.5, right? Jeff says, what was Boeheim thinking? Smallest guy inbounding the ball up one in the corner. Another blown chance. Mark brings up rebounding, and North Carolina was going to out-rebound Syracuse. That was just going to be the case. It was actually, we'll go over the numbers here, a little closer than you would think, 44-30. I know that sounds like, whoa, what do you mean? It's 44-30. That's a huge gap. Syracuse actually kept it within reason for most of the game. Carolina pulled away eventually, particularly on the offensive side. 16-5 edge on the offensive glass for North Carolina, but I expected that. Carolina's had a huge rebounding gap on everybody. That's what they typically do, so not surprised to see that. Syracuse shot 49% and lost this game. 31 of 63. They hit 10 threes. Typically when Syracuse is around 9 or 10 threes, they win. Problem is when you give up 14 threes, and Syracuse just could not cover Caleb Love, who ends up on the night with 21 points. He was 4 of 12 from three-point range. Felt like a lot more than that, but he got a ton of open looks. So he had 21. It was just another manic Monday. Sorry, had to get that line in there. Manic with 22 points for North Carolina. Davis and Baycott, 17, and Baycott had 18 of those rebounds that we mentioned. Not a stunner. This kid is a rebounding machine. He's the best center in the ACC for a reason, and Syracuse didn't provide much resistance in the paint there. We mentioned a Cole Swider, 36 points in this game, 14 of 21, 7 of 11. He did foul out of the game in overtime. Next up for the Orange was Buddy Boeheim with 14 points, Jimmy Boeheim with 10, Barama Sidibe chipped in 8, but we mentioned Girard, just a terrible game for him, 9 points, 4 of 12, 1 of 5 from three-point range, 4 assists, 4 turnovers, none bigger than the inbounds pass that he couldn't convert. And we mentioned it, there were times Jimmy had to step in and bring up the ball. And with no Symir Torrance available, remember, he had the cut on his head, end up being diagnosed with a concussion. So he's probably out for the season, I would imagine, with just minimum 2 games to go. Miami on Saturday and then the ACC tournament. There's no backup point guard. I mean, God love Patty Casey. You're not going to put, Patty Casey in a game that matters when the score is tight. Syracuse just doesn't have enough depth at that position to come in, and that change of pace guard that Symir Torrance brings the orange, not an option tonight, as Girard had to carry the load and did not do it well in this game, to say the least. Just a couple other numbers on UNC. Beat Syracuse in bench points, 24-8. Syracuse actually beat Carolina at points in the paint, 28-24. Carolina assisted 21 of 29 buckets. Syracuse with just 9 assists on 31 field goals. This team just does not move the ball. Now, Carolina 16 of 20 at the free throw line. Syracuse got to the free throw line just 8 times and went 7 of 8. The Orange with 11 turnovers on the night, and Carolina got 10 points there. Syracuse with 11 points off Carolina's 8 turnovers. The Tar Heels, by the way, shot 41%, 29 of 79, but we mentioned those 14 threes, making up that difference, keeping them in the game and getting them eventually into overtime and winning in that overtime session by a mark of 15-6. Lori, speaking for a lot of fans, probably saying, so tired at this point. Matt Cole was outstanding tonight. Yeah, how about Cole Swider completely disappeared from the Duke game? Duke, you had Cole Swider and Jimmy Boeheim combined for 2 points and a rebound. And Jimmy actually bounced back, had a pretty decent game, had some clutch baskets down the stretch. We mentioned it, up with 10 points on the night, 7 rebounds for Jimmy, 3 assists in 41 minutes as well. So a decent game for him, certainly a bounce back from the awful game he had against Duke. But man, when you got Swider going for 36, you have got to take advantage of that. And Syracuse, for a good part of the game, did. But Joe Girard, just too many mistakes, bad decisions. And there was one time he took a 3 down the stretch. Cole Swider's wide open in the paint. Joe's got to run the team at that point. You got to run the offense. You got to know you don't have it on offense. I mean, he hit the shot that tied it. It was a baseline jumper that was open, which, wasn't a high percentage shot, not a shot he usually takes, but he got it. And he got Syracuse in overtime, and it kind of felt like that scene from Dumb and Dumber. And then you went and totally redeem yourself. And then obviously did not in overtime for this team. As Ed says, just another bad inbounds play at the end. I mean, deja vu, man. What is it with Syracuse and that bad inbounds play? Julie says that Swider broke the record for most points by a visiting player. Julie, I don't think he did. I think the record is actually 37 for North Carolina. He had 36, but he came very close to doing that. Mark noting that another team that got torched by the buttery soft zone from 3. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. The Syracuse plays man defense. They're going to get butter torched there in that sense, right? Because they're just not a very athletic team at this point. Let's see. David says, fear. Coach Boeheim rules with fear when it comes to Girard. He looks over him like a beat-up puppy. Sad. Ron says, good game, tough loss, but much better than Saturday. Yeah, this was a game as opposed to Saturday when that thing was over before it started. Al says, JB, great coach, but that's 2 games this year. Syracuse had the ball in the lead in the waning seconds, but could not securely inbounds the basketball. Just snake bit in that situation for sure. Brian thinks this team could be 18-11, just not meant to be, but definitely some great individual performances by Buddy and some by JG3, Jimmy, and of course Cole, who was red hot tonight. Heidi says should have went man-to-man with 14 seconds. That would have confused him. Yeah, they wouldn't have seen that coming for sure. They did press a little bit when they needed to in overtime. No TV Teddy, by the way, Dale, even with that discrepancy in the free throw situation. David wants to know, will Symir be playing on Saturday? Family is going to the Dome. I don't think so. I'm not intimately familiar with the concussion protocols at Syracuse, but obviously they take them very seriously for all their athletes, and you're not going to mess around with a concussion in any sport. I don't think he's going to have the practice time going into Saturday, so I think maybe Jim Boeheim is updating the situation at his press conference. I haven't seen it yet, but I would not expect to see Symir on Saturday. I'd be frankly very surprised if he was cleared and ready to play in that game, specifically with that lack of practice time he's going to get. Matt says 9 assists won't do it. Too much one-on-one ball hurt them at the end. And the interesting thing, Matt, is they actually moved the ball well early in the game when they were sparked, when they were going. Cole was hitting contested shots, open shots, every shot that came his way. Cole was brilliant. It's one of the most brilliant games I've seen from a Syracuse player in recent memory, frankly, the way he played. They were moving the ball, and then for some reason, it went back to ISO ball. I mentioned the Carolina numbers. They move, they push, they keep a step ahead, 21 assists. So I don't want to hear assists are overrated when you got Carolina outdoing Syracuse 21-9 in that department. And you know how many times the Syracuse dribble by the free throw line, take a shot about 5 seconds too late, and it's going off the rim or just not a high percentage shot at this point. Jim says that Girard's not a Division I point guard. Jim, I agree. I mean, he's just out of position. It's tough in this game. Obviously, with Symir out, Joe's the best you got at a point guard. But next year, I'm kind of wondering how it's going to go with Justin Taylor on the other side. Is it Joe and Justin Taylor? Is it Symir at the point, Joe at the 2, with Justin mixing in additionally at the 2, or maybe even at the 3 at times? But he's just not a point guard. His decision-making wanes. He gets frustrated. The confidence. He hit the shot at the end to tie it at 73. You got to give him credit for that. But Joe is an offensive-minded 2, playing the point. And I know he's been up there in terms of assists and some of the numbers out there. But listen, that's just by, being at that position. I don't think Joe is a point guard. And if Syracuse can find somebody who's more pure at the position, and I think they have in Symir when healthy, of course, maybe we'll see a change there at this point. Jimmy says free throws matter, Brent. Oh, preaching to the choir there, my friend. Syracuse got hosed there. Look, there's no question they could have blown the whistle more. At one point, North Carolina had 17 free throw attempts to Syracuse's 2. I mean, what are we doing here? Especially with how physical the game is. You got Baycott inside. You got Manick inside. They definitely could have whistled Syracuse a little bit more. In that case, our friend Steve says Carolina called for 1 foul in the first half, and we wound up minus 9 points at the line. Brian, with one of the best comments of the night, this game summarizes the season. Brian, it really does. You think about the weight game. You think of a lot of late game situations. Syracuse just did not come through when they did in the Indiana game earlier in the season that they won in double overtime. But, this is not a team that was known for its clutch play and clutch situations. And this was just another example of that, man. That inbounds play is going to haunt this team. And now, look, they're 15-15. With the distinct possibility of falling under 500 to finish the regular season against Miami. It's a top 4 team in the league. Then you go to the ACC tournament. You're going to try and dig yourself out of a hole there. And our friend Steve called my radio show and brought up this point today about, when Syracuse goes to the NIT, if they go to the NIT, which I think they will, you're trying to round out above 500 record or 500 record. There's other tournaments out there that I don't think you would go to just to do that. But you go to the NIT, let's say you go into the NIT at 500, lose a game, finish below 500. Was it worth it? I mean, the NIT, it's motivation is weird, and how teams are motivated to play in a tournament like that. If they go to it, it's obviously the other tournament's a disappointment. This would not be a motivated team. Remember, Syracuse went to the NIT in 2017. They should have been in the NCAA tournament. Famously went to the NIT in 2007. After another season, they should have been in the tournament. And obviously got screwed out of going to that tournament and went on a tear in the NIT. There's 25,000 people at the Dome going crazy for NIT basketball, right? Not going to be one of those years. It's going to be a team that is not only motivation. This team plays hard, and they got games out, but it's a different situation when you're in a tournament you don't want to be in, not to mention the depth isn't there. Symir out, Jesse out, tired team. I saw one quick comment from Boeheim's presser before we started streaming here that this team and no team should play 5 games in 10 days in the ACC. I have a hard time disagreeing with that. I don't think you should be putting schedules together like that for a team. They do get a week off to finish off the season, but that's a tough bend. But, that's prime time, baby. You want to play in the ACC, get the prime spot on ESPN on a Saturday, and then get the prime spot on Big Monday to foul. That's what you got to do. And remember, one of those games was rescheduled. The Georgia Tech game was rescheduled. So that's on you. If you don't want to reschedule the game, I mean, maybe the league mandated it, but if you don't want to reschedule that game, maybe you speak up a little louder and say, that's okay. We don't need to play that. But one of those situations, I'm sure they'll look at that in the off season. As Steve notes, the home cooking in Chapel Hill. ACC refs not necessarily bound to below the Mason-Dixon line, contrary to popular opinion at this point. John wants to know, what is it? It's just poor play calling. David says, left wide open, Joe does not, he let wide open 3, Joe does not even contest it. So you're talking about Caleb Love. Yeah, Caleb Love hit that open 3 at the end. There are times when Joe and Buddy, frankly, don't chase down shooters up on the 3-point line. I don't know why. I mean, it could be exhaustion at this point, but even in games where they're not exhausted, that happens. I mean, it's one thing if you're just not good enough defensively, but to not chase down shooters at all and just give them a clear path to shoot, especially a guy like Caleb Love, which is not a good idea. Yeah, that's frustrating to watch at times for sure. As Vince notes, once again, they beat us with 3s. What would it have been if could have the skill to play man-to-man? Boeheim said he will try man next year. He actually did say that. He said that recently on his radio program with the build and the makeup of the team next year. They're going to mix in some man-to-man. I mean, that's what he said in February. It's another thing to do it in November, but this is a more athletic team next year. And I'm wondering about next year's team, considering how young it's going to be. Think about how he talked about Frank, how we talked about Benny this year, and Benny wasn't ready to come in at certain times of the year. That was fair, and he was right about that. Now you got a whole bunch of young guys playing, at least 2 or 3 in the starting lineup, and a couple others that are, at the very least, according to Boeheim, going to get on the court. You can't talk to all those guys like Benny and Frank. So I'm as curious as anybody how that is going to play out next year with a younger team, but a more athletic team. You know, you're trading you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way, and we'll see if they add another recruit to the mix, of course, with a big-time recruit visiting on Saturday that Jim Boeheim referenced there. And they've got 5 in the class of 2022. They add a 6, maybe 1 or 2 out of the portal. You never know the comings and goings in the portal, and we'll see what the makeup of next year's team is. But the what was I going to say? The returners that you know are going to be back are Joe, Symir, Frank, Cole's leaving, Jimmy's leaving, Buddy's leaving. We'll see what the portal brings and doesn't bring, right? But a lot of young guys on the team next year, for sure. Old school reference here. Cole was like Sutherland versus Arkansas. Steve, what do you have? 43 in that game, if memory serves? He just could not miss. Confident, pulling up right away, contested, uncontested, different spots on the floor, taking it inside when necessary. What a game. What a game for Cole Swider. It's a shame it gets lost in a loss like this for sure. Let's see. Mark thinks that Miami's going to kill this team on Saturday. Rob jumps in to say, whoa, where did Brent go? Behind the comment. This game is a reminder of what could have been this season. Cole with a monster game, and anybody who thinks Jim can't coach anymore needs a clue. They just keep battling even now with the postseason long out of reach. Jesse's injury was, as Axe said, what essentially sunk their battleship this season. Maybe with him, based on what we saw against Wake Forest at the Dome, they would have developed into what would have competed for a tournament bid and become a team that makes winning time plays more common. I think they would have had a winning record with Jesse, but remember, this was a bubble team, if that, with Jesse. Jesse was going on a tear. The shame of it was how well he was playing individually, and I think he would have made them better in this game, would have made them better in the Duke game. Every game they've played as of late. Notre Dame, you name it, could have been the difference between winning and losing some of those close games recently. But remember, they were kind of straddling the line with him anyway, so I don't want to build up Jesse to be like, you know, the great what if that Syracuse would have made the tournament with him. I think they still would have struggled to do that, but certainly, I mean, it goes without saying how much better of a player he makes this team. No question about it. Can't wait to see what he does next year. His injury should be fine by next year, and off we go. Mary Ellen says Syracuse has never learned how to inbound the ball. This game should have never gone into overtime. Inbounding the ball has become the new free throws. Remember for so long how Syracuse struggled at free throws, and, you know, guys did it this year. You know, Jimmy Boeheim was a 60% free throw shooter. I mean, even with the great free throw shooters they have, Buddy and Joe notably. But that free throw thing's kind of waned in recent years. Inbounds passes are the new free throws apparently, for this team. And what a shame that is, because it's as simple a play as it gets. But it's like the long snapper in football. He executes it 99 out of 100 times. The one time he bobbles the ball, everybody knows. Same thing with an inbounds pass, and here we go. We've seen that twice this year in key situations, clutch situations for the Orange. Christopher says, Brent, nice thing about starting so many young players next year is that we know the ceiling these players have. I'll roll the dice on the new kids and take the highs and the lows. A little bit of a refresh, if you will, in play for Syracuse next year. Sarah says, like Leaky Black, I give Leaky Black a lot of credit keeping Buddy under wraps. I like that Barama was very active on the board. Sarah, I'll tell you what, I mean, just to go back to Buddy's numbers, Buddy ended up with 14, 5 of 13, 2 of 5. That's pretty good from three-point range. That's pretty good on Leaky Black, who is an elite defender. He always gets assigned the other team's leading scorer. Buddy managed to get a few on him, but Leaky, probably held Buddy from, Buddy against an average defensive team is going to have anywhere from, 20 to 24 points. Leaky kind of kept him in check. They could not stop Cole, which helped Buddy get the open looks, even with Leaky on him at times. There was one three-pointer Buddy kind of went one way, shifted back the other way, got a wide open three, got the best of him there. But Leaky Black is a terrific player. And there was some talk that he might not have been in this game. He had to leave Saturday's game against NC State, but there he was, and certainly made a big difference on Buddy in this game. Thank you, Steve, for looking that up. Sutherland had 35 against Arkansas, so Cole got him by 1 point in this game, almost setting the opposing team record in North Carolina. A few more from you guys here as we're rocking and rolling on a Monday night. We've been getting together a lot recently, right? 5 games in 10 days, and we'll take a few days off and the regular season finale to come on Saturday against Miami. Let's see. Let's go with Chris here, who says, Cuse has always developed players better than most teams, but the transfers have hurt that process. Some of those players would have made a difference on this team. You think of Alan Griffin, who was here for 1 year. Cole Swider is going to be an example of a 1-year guy. I know he's the coach's son, but Jimmy Boeheim, in and out in 1 year. I mean, it's the system that's out there. If you can bring in a player that can help you, even in a short period of time. But when you play zone defense, and we mentioned it looks like Syracuse might incorporate some man-to-man next year. But the learning curve of coming to Syracuse obviously is bigger, considering you got to learn the zone and play the zone. You got to learn to contribute, find your strength. Cole found his strength. Cole's a shooter and he's a rebounder, right? We saw Cole at an absolute extreme tonight on the offensive end, but throughout the year, he was let me look up the numbers while we're yapping about it here, but I don't know if he led the team in rebounding this year. I don't think he did, but he was certainly one of the more consistent rebounders on this team this year. So, I mean, if you can get a player like that, particularly to replace those that went into the portal last year, you have to do it. And sometimes you got to pounce on it quickly. Like with Cole, it felt like he was always going to come to Syracuse, but a couple guys will kind of, it's almost like recruiting all over again, right? Well, I'm thinking about these 3 schools and they're seeing what their options are and, kind of playing it out to see who's going to give them the most time. Because if you're recruiting a transfer, that transfer wants out, obviously, because he didn't play that much or for whatever reasons was unhappy at his prior school. So as I look at it here, yeah, Cole did lead this team in rebounding. Cole had 199 rebounds thus far. Jimmy Boeheim, 182. Jesse Edwards, before he got hurt, ended up with 156. So yeah, Cole is the leading rebounder on this team. Pretty incredible. 6'9" guy that can grab some rebounds, got outmatched by Ben Caro and Mark Williams and Duke. And I thought they would have no chance against Baycott tonight. Baycott got his. He was a great player, just not going to stop that guy, but certainly not as dominant as Williams and Ben Caro were for Duke on Saturday, for sure. Mike says, would love to see Cole back next year. Haven't heard him going anywhere pro-wise, maybe Europe. He is leaving, Mike, according to Jim Boeheim. Jim Boeheim said on his radio show last week that Jimmy, Buddy, and Cole are going to leave. I'm not sure what he's pursuing there in terms of pro ball. None of those 3 will get drafted, of course. Buddy will get some looks. He'll go, I think, into the summer league. I don't think Cole's going to get drafted. Certainly, I don't think Jimmy has any pro ball aspirations, maybe in Europe or something like that. Jimmy's going to be just fine. He was a finance major, went to Cornell and M, smart guys. went to Cornell. So whatever he does, he's going to do fine. But I'm not sure if a professional basketball is in his future. But Buddy is going to certainly give it a go somewhere in that realm. But it looks like they're done. And I would like to see Cole back too. He does have another year of eligibility as Buddy does, but can't begrudge him either. They're kind of ready to move on and do their thing. Let's see. Lori says, do you think Miami will cover Cole and free up Buddy and Joe Girard? Seems to not be a threat. I think if I'm Miami and I watch that film, I got to do everything I can to keep Cole from scoring. But it's not like Carolina didn't defend him. He just did a great job getting to his spots, getting the ball off really quick tonight. It was something to watch. What a performance for Cole Swider tonight for sure. So Lori mentioned it. Miami is next for this team. That is Saturday. So as we were mentioning there, that's the last home game for Buddy Boeheim. It's the last home game for Jimmy Boeheim. It's the last home game for Cole Swider, Barama Sidibe on that list. Perhaps a name or two we're not thinking of that are not necessarily seniors in a traditional sense, but could be their last games at Syracuse if they do choose to enter the portal or something of that nature. You always got to keep that in mind. It's a 1:00 tip time on Saturday. So that'll be our last regular season post-game show, but we're going to be here doing our Syracuse basketball post-game presented by Krause Health. As long as Syracuse plays, we'll be here doing it through the postseason. As far as they go, I don't think I'll be really excited about doing NIT post-games, but we'll be here. That's what we do, man. We do post-game shows after the game, and we'll see what it brings. And we'll hear a week of Syracuse trying to avoid fallen below 500. There was talk of, Jim Boeheim got asked about retirement on Saturday. He, of course, was not fond of that. He's already made it pretty clear he's coming back next year, and you can debate whether you agree with that or not, but he's definitely coaching this team next year. But if they struggle again, that conversation and those questions are going to get very, very interesting for sure. But we know he'll be back next year to try and dig Syracuse out of this hole. One game to go in the regular season, Miami on Saturday at the Dome, and then at least one in the ACC tournament. And again, right now, Syracuse is slotted for the 8-9 game, which would be on Wednesday in Brooklyn. And the winner of that game, guess who they play, kids? Duke. Oh, goody, right? But we'll see how the bracket plays out as the final regular season, the final game of the regular season awaits for Syracuse on Saturday. 5 games in 10 days over for the Orange, and it's a stretch that saw them fall to 15-15 with an 88-79 loss to North Carolina in overtime tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We'll be back Saturday after the Orange take on Miami. You guys enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next time on Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health.